Buddy Martin Show is on the air.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Hello, welcome to the program. Buddy Martin Show, Smelled on Law Monday. We're on Monday through Thursday each week. I am the host of the show. You can hear us on YouTube as well as on many other platforms. And here tonight, thank you for joining us. Tell your friends and neighbors we're on the air. Got started a little bit late tonight. Apologize for that. Coming up just a second, Shane Matthews will join us. He is coming home from his XFL job, and on his way he's driving home, so he'll be on his show tomorrow morning. I understand I'll be with him. And tonight, all week long, we've been talking about the comparison of the two greatest coaches in Florida football history. You can name them. It's pretty easy. Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier. So we had a conversation over the weekend. We ran a fake story last week written by artificial intelligence to see how many of you pick up on it. Not many did. Dan Bond was one of them. And so this weekend we decided to do a comparison after a phone call from Steve Spurrier last week saying, what do Urban Meyer and I have most in common? And I thought about it. I said, I don't know. I know they'd like to win. And he said, we hate to lose. So it got me thinking about, you know what, I'd like to do a comparison of these two guys. And really, the headline of the story was a little bit misleading, like who's the greatest Spurrier or Meyer. It's not really pitting one against the other, but it gives you an idea of the magnitude of these guys and what they did in their accomplishments. And when you start drilling down and looking at it, it's amazing what they did. So last couple of days, I decided I would get a hold of them and talk to them, and I did. And I asked each of them about the other guy. And I'm writing a series of stories starting this weekend on Gator. If you're not a member, you need to join. Go to gatorbaitmedia.com and sign up. And then tonight we have a couple of sound bites, which we have play. We have longer interviews. I talked to both of them this morning. Quite interesting conversations from both. Essentially talking about their time in Florida and how they observed the other person when we were there. I'm going to play a couple of those short bites here in a minute, and Shane Matthews will join us. We'll talk about it. You look at the records they put up there as absolutely, think about it. You know how many losses they had at home? I'm not going to tell you. Think about it, these two guys. We know what the championships, count them up. So we're going to hear about that. First, we're going to hear from our sponsor tonight, the folks at Meld on Law, and come back and we'll talk to Shane Matthews.
When you're a member of the Gator Nation, you know what it means to never back down. Meldon Law has been a proud supporter of the Gator Nation since 1971. Two forces that won't back down. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them.
All right, thanks very much there, Jeffrey Melton, and on Melton Law Monday. Welcome back to the program. Our traveling pal, he's on the road again, except this time the car's going the right way. It's back to where he belongs, right here in Gainesville, Florida. My pal, my buddy, my partner on this show and his show, Shane Matthews. Good evening to you, Shane.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I don't think you're going to be able to hear this bite now that I think about it. But it's a bite with Steve talking about, Steve Spurrier talking about Urban Meyer. And later in the show, I have Urban Meyer talking about Steve. as I'm doing this, I don't want to call it a comparison, but the HBC called me last week and said, "What do you think we have most in common?" And I said, "Well, winning." He said, "No, it's really hating to lose." And so I said, "You know what? That'd be an interesting topic." So I got a hold of Steve and I talked to him. I got a hold of Urban and talked to him about the other one. We have a couple of bites here. I don't think you'll be able to hear them here. I'm sorry, unless you can turn your phone on real fast. Let's see if I can change the sound on it. Maybe you can hear. I'll give it a shot here to see if this works. All right, here's Coach Spurrier today. It's a short bite, couple of minutes long, talking about Urban and what he remembers in one particular part of what Urban was doing. Let's see if Shane can hear it. Stand by, Shane. We're going to try it.
All right.
Now, he's coming in behind you. It's pretty hard to follow that act. And yet, the two of you together, I think, won 187 games and only lost 33. And he wound up winning 3 national championships, a whole bunch of SECs. And the two of you did that together. Talk about what you saw in what he did at Florida and what your theories were about how he coached.
Well, the year he won his first one in 2006, it was remarkable. It was remarkable because they won so many close games. I think they had 2 one-point victories. And I remember Tim Tebow told me that he was at Vanderbilt, and I think the Gators were up, I think he said 25-19 or 24-19, something like that. And he said, I was on the hands team that year. I was a freshman. So I had to get the onside kicker. Vandy was about to beat us up there. But anyway, once they won the division and played a heck of a game in the SEC, and then had an outstanding game in the national championship game. They pretty much clobbered Ohio State. But I think his 08 team, what he'll tell you, that was his best. Maybe his best team. Statistically, I think it was, because I think they beat their opponents by an average of 27 or 28 points, something like that.
Now, I asked him and I asked you, what was your best win and what was your worst defeat?
You talking to me?
Yeah. What was yours? Your best win?
Oh, the best one, I always say the early ones that sort of give you a push in the right direction. So you could maybe say at Alabama, the second game we ever coached here, we're down 10-0, and the players even later said, "Hey, in the old days we'd say, hey, there's no way we can beat these guys at their place behind 10-0." But everybody said, let's just keep playing. Just keep playing. Something good will happen. That's sort of more of my message is you got to keep playing and believe something good's going to happen, and it did. And as the game, Will White got 3 interceptions, and Shane threw the ball out of the end zone to Ernie Mills, and we held on to beat him 17-13, I think. So that was one that propelled us to be in position to win the SEC that first year, which we did. And then
not the 52-20?
No, that was 17-13, 1990 game.
Yeah, no, I mean not. But you take that over your national championship win over FSU.
Well, that was the biggest win. But you asked me what was the most important.
Okay, all right.
And I think that one started us winning SECs.
Okay.
And so we win 6 in the first 7 years, and then. We were in position for that national championship a bunch of times. Of course, 95, Nebraska clobbered us up there. But we got it back in 96. But, the way it was back then, you had to sort of have some good luck. We were playing FSU, last game of the season, and they were always, number 1, 3, or 4, 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the country, just about every time we played them. So the way college football was then, there was no 14 playoff. So whoever lost that game was out of the national championship hunt. So we try to set our goals on winning the SEC and talk about it. And if we get in position for that national, then certainly that was going to be one of our goals also. But anyway, there was too many really big games, but that was a good one early. And then those SEC championship games, 93, 4, Yeah, 5 and 6, we pretty much won convincingly. But 93 and 94 Alabama games, we really played well and won both of those in fairly close games.
Okay, there's Coach Spurrier talking. I don't know how much, Shane, you could hear of that, if any. I was a little surprised. Did you hear part of it?
Yeah, I heard it all.
Okay. I'm a little surprised that I said his biggest win. Maybe I didn't ask the question right. That he would say that Alabama game that first year. Then he explained it, and then, of course, I said the 52-20 national championship game, but he said it was important to establish it early on. And in the interview earlier, I had asked him, how did you know you could win? I mean, when you went there, did you have a plan, whatever? And he said it's so important that Alabama. You remember that? He said you threw out of the end zone, threw a ball out of the end zone that game. So what do you remember about that Alabama game?
Well, I agree 110% with Coach. It's the biggest or most important win in Florida football history. Before Coach Spurrier got there, Florida had some good teams, but really had trouble winning SEC road games and winning championships. And when you go into on the road in his first year against a team with all the tradition and all the championships that Alabama had won, I mean, that's how you put your name on the map. And, we sputtered around but found a way to win the game, but it's clearly the most important game in school history.
Yeah, and the more that this goes on, Shane, the more we look back at those early 90s when you all started the tradition, the more remarkable it is to think that you could win that many SECs. Not even Alabama could do that. In fact, you're talking about Nick kind of being over the hill now. But looking at it, and you didn't hear his comments about Urban that much, and we'll have more of that later in the week, talking about how many close games they won, and how they were fortunate to win the close games, and then of course they wound up clobbering Ohio State as they did. Later on, we're going to play the bite from Urban, which you won't hear, but he was such a huge admirer of Spurrier's. I mean, he really, and one thing I loved about what Urban did, he gets criticized. When he came in there, he didn't show any disrespect for Spurrier or his teams. In fact, he did everything he could to show his respect for them. And he said in this interview, he says later, he says, I don't want people bashing the former coach. So basically, I told my staff members, if you say anything bad about him, you're gone. He didn't believe in that, but he really admired Steve. And I said, when did you see him for the first time at Pala? He said, I watched him a lot, but the 96 championship game, the FSU, was a game that really got him going. And so I loved the way they played, the way they dressed, the way they walked, the way they conducted themselves. So he has a very high regard for Steve. When you go and look at the numbers, and these, and we'll get to the NFL draft next in their Aaron Rodgers trade. You think about this, their record combined was 187, 33, and 5 with 8 SECs, is that right? And 3 national championships combined. And even Steve said, I guess we pretty much won most everything in terms of titles. And the home record was amazing. Spurrier just lost 5, and Urban, his total record was 65-15. I think Urban might have lost 6, I believe, at home. That's an amazing record. So, folks, enjoy the memories because you probably aren't going to see that again around Florida football. Shane, you're on your way home.
I am.
And you're back from the wars, back from the XFL, back to your radio show. I'm told by Freddie Wiebe I'm to be available tomorrow morning.
That's right, Betty. You've been sleeping in, buddy, so you got to wake up tomorrow.
Dan Bond is quick to tell me that Urban lost 5 also. So there you go. How about the big news tonight? We don't usually talk about the pros, but the Aaron Rodgers trade and now the upcoming draft. Okay, all you cheeseheads out there, The Aaron Rodgers era is over in Green Bay. Sorry to my friends Becca and Jeff and Julie and everybody who loves Aaron, but Aaron's going to be a New York Jet. And I got a picture here that's, of him. What do he look like if he ages? This is how you can't see it, but you'd appreciate this. This is how he's going to age the next 3 years. How he looks like he's been through a hard road. But what a deal. Did you hear the terms of the deal?
I did not hear the terms.
Okay. Well, I just got the round drafts. Here's what the draft picks were. The Packers traded him for the number 15 pick in this year's draft. And a second round, number 43. A fourth round, number 112. A fifth round, 143 and 170. They got all that. And so there's some kind of deal. Maybe someone can set me straight. He's got to play X number of snaps or there's some discount. I'm not sure. So he's a Jet. And people in New York, they're loving it because Jet fans are so hungry. They have such inveterate fans, and they're really thinking, this is our time. What do you think of the deal, Shane?
Well, I think Aaron Rodgers is an outstanding player. If you're a Packer fan, you're hating it right now because I guess Jordan Love is the
guy,
the next guy in line. I don't see it happening. I think the Jets. I don't follow the Jets closely, but I'm just trying to think back to the last couple of years. It seems like they've been very good defensively, just had no offense. So, look, the Patriots. They're okay. The Dolphins are okay, but why can't the Jets win that division? Buffalo's there, so it's a very intriguing division now with Aaron Rodgers. But he definitely makes them a contender right away.
Yeah, it does change things. Now I'm thinking this is crazy to me why I'm thinking this way, but I'm not sure where Anthony Richardson will go. But wouldn't it be something if he fell to 15 and went to the Jets?
He could.
Play behind Jordan Love for a year or two.
You mean go to the Packers?
No, I'm sorry. No, going to the Jets, not Jordan Love, but going to the draft choice that they got, going to the Packers.
I wouldn't see the Jets taking a quarterback in the first round. Now they have Aaron Rodgers. They took the kid from BYU first round a couple of years ago. So. I have not really looked at the draft, but from what I've heard from different people, that Anthony will probably be the fourth quarterback taken. I don't know where that'll be. But everybody is pretty much a foregone conclusion. Bryce Young is going to be the first pick. And then I think C.J. Stroud, then Will Levis, and then probably Anthony. But I don't think he'll go to New York, but who knows?
Well, I got that wrong. The 15th draft pick goes to the Packers from the Jets. So he'll be a Packer pick there. So I got to get all my ducks in a V here. But, there's a lot of stuff. This is rumor week. I'd start flying. And now the latest word is that C.J. Stroud no longer a surefire top selection. Peter King said he believes that Stroud is in a lock to go with the top 7. And one executive says he never had someone grade so low on the cognition test. You know what that cognition test, what that's all about?
I do not.
Here it is. All right, I got it for you right here. Here it is. He's taking a hit on the cognition test. And that test includes, I'm going to give it to you right here, only on this show. I'll read it to you on your show tomorrow too, so you'll have it. So it includes evaluation of quarterbacks in terms of 9 different cognitive skills: perception speed, whatever that is, search efficiency, I guess that's looking safeties off, I don't know, tracking capacity, visual learning, instinctive learning, decision complexity, distraction control, impulse control, and improvisation. That sounds like some Harvard MBA made that up.
Yeah, I've never heard any of that stuff. Look, bottom line, the way I look at quarterbacks, watch the tape, see how they play throughout the course of a year, watch their decision making, how accurate they throw the football. I mean, hell, it ain't that hard. You know, you can figure out who can play. I don't know why they do all those silly tests, quite honestly.
Well, because they hire these guys, they got to have some justify their salaries. They come up with stuff.
but think about some guys that have, whatever this test is, that have graded real high, that did not translate to them producing in the National Football League. So it's all a crapshoot, quite honestly. I think the best thing to do is look at the tape and say, hey, can this guy play or not?
Yeah. Well, you are a quick study that way. You know that you can see it faster than most. Scott Carter tweeted out tonight. He says, I've got Anthony Richardson, Osiris Torrance, and Gervon Dexter as certain NFL draft selections. After that, who's likely to get picked? And his names like Ventrell Miller, Cox, Shorter, etc. What do you think? Got anybody?
I mean, yeah, the three that he mentioned are obviously going to get drafted. I think the other three that he mentioned will be 5th, 6th, and 7th rounders, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So we'll see how it works out. All right. So Shane, you haven't been watching any baseball, I know. The total collapse of the Gators in Columbia is not going well. That's the first time they lost the series in over a year. And the way they lost it, I mean, they're total collapse again on their bullpen. And I'm beginning to wonder if it's affecting their chances to go. You know, they'll make it, I think. But the SEC is pretty tight now. And suddenly South Carolina's vaulted to the top. Florida's last ranked standings is 4 now. So they're going to have to start getting better bullpen pitching. And even their hitting has been spotty, which is something's been great. So that's going to have to change. All right. Any thoughts on baseball? You don't follow it that close. Do you follow softball?
No, I mean, I do. I saw they did get swept. But, I mean, as you stated, week in and week out in the SEC is tough. It's not like they lost a series to the bottom feeders or anybody like that.
Sure.
It's baseball. I mean, you can go through slumps a couple of weeks, and then you can get hot. I have zero concern. I know the pitching, the walks, all whatever you want to put your finger on. Everybody has those issues throughout the course of the year. Hopefully, it's just their 1 week, and then it'll be done with.
And now your softball team is taking a, as Stan Bond says, softball is drowning this year. He's a big softball fan. Tim Walton's got his hands full.
Well, it's the SEC. And, if you don't put it all together, you can lose a bunch of games. We're not used to losing a bunch of games. Yeah. But, again, it all comes down to postseason play. You know, that's the big thing, buddy. I mean, for baseball and softball, it really does not matter. I mean, yes, for hosting super regionals and things like that, but it all comes down to winning a few games in the postseason and moving on, and that's all that really matters.
All right, so I guess you said the big news is 2 more players from Florida, one in the portal. Xavier Henderson being one, and you got hold on a second, my producer's texting me. And then you had 2. You had the other one was Antoine Powell Ryland, the edge rusher. Any of that surprise you? I mean, I've checked into that and I've heard varying things. What do you hear about it?
Well, I've heard zero about it. I did see it, just like most people did on Twitter, but I have not had time to look into it. Look, it's the way of the world now. If kids decide to leave for whatever reason, tip your hat and say good luck. I mean, it's just like, I don't know if you saw Colorado's got like 18 players.
Well, that was my next statement. They have 15. Yeah. 15
I'm on a limb right now, buddy.
Yeah.
Colorado will not win 3 games next year.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a couple of clips of that. I don't know if I've ever seen a college football team look like they did. I mean, it literally looked like there were some kids from like junior high out there playing in that spring game. And they had it like set up like certain plays to score certain touchdowns. It was very bizarre to me. Very, very bizarre.
Well, and I wish someone would help me with this name. I know you guys know what it is. I read that their 4-star corner, 1-1, is it Snyder? What's his last name? Somebody help me out with that. I see that he is now among those, and he is also coming to visit Florida. So that's a guy that certainly they'd love to have. I remember they recruited him. I can't think of his last name. Come on, Dan or somebody. What's 1-1's last name?
So, buddy, what did you hear why our 2 guys are transferring? Because I have not heard.
We reported it. It was reported over the weekend, and we had it on Gator Bait. Yeah, they went to portal.
No, I know that. I'm saying, what did you hear why they're leaving?
Well, first concerned me, and then Francis is going to be on later. He said, "Don't worry about it. There's reason," indicating that he was that he thought that they were kind of told that there's a door, and even though Henderson was productive, there's some issues there with Henderson I don't know about. Francis is closer to it than I am, and Antoine Powell Ryland, they said, is not big enough to play the edge, according to France. So that's what I'm hearing. Again, I don't have any connections like that. Those guys have better than I do. But I think that's, and there's probably going to be some names popping in here soon. I think the portal's got one more week, I believe is what it is. And you have a chance to improve your team. So we'll see. But that's right, 15 players have left Boulder since the spring game. And I didn't see the game. You said you saw it?
I saw clips of it, and when I tell you, it was like I've never seen anything like it in my entire life, buddy. They would line up, and it was almost like they told the defense, "Don't even go over there and cover guys." I mean, they wouldn't even cover the guys before the ball was snapped, and they just run right down the field for a touchdown. It was crazy, really? Absolutely, bad. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, Dan Bond mentions that he's right because this is what I was told too. Is that Henderson's playing time? Those young receivers, Andy Jean and Aiden Mizell, were going to get playing time ahead of him, and so I think that's another reason he could read the handwriting on the wall. Again, I'm guessing based on what people tell me here that this is what's so hard to know how to report this. So hard. Hey, listen, Shane, I want to tell you I'm proud of myself. I converted a Penn State fan today. Okay. I went to pick up a rental car today at Enterprise here in Ocala. I ran across this young gentleman who, first of all, asked us, "Where do you work?" I said, "Well, I do. I'm self-employed. What do you do?" "Well, I do Gator Bait." I said, "Oh, you're Buddy Martin. I know your voice." I said, "You're the one guy," and I know that actually there's no voice, no. And he's a nice young man. He was at Penn State. He's from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, up close to where my daughter is. And I said, "You're not a Penn State fan, are you?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "No, man, come on over to be a Gator fan." He said, "Yeah, I'm going to be a Gator fan." So it's chalk one up for me. I converted a guy from being a Penn State fan to a Gator fan. Come on,
good work, buddy.
We got a room on the bandwagon. Come on. What you going to talk about tomorrow?
We're going to talk about the Gator golf team who won the SEC championship. I'm sure my guys talked about it today. I was not able to do a show, but that's J.C. Deacon's first SEC title. They beat Vanderbilt, who they lost to last year. And we'll talk a little NBA playoffs, which are going on. We'll talk Gator stuff, We'll talk whatever you want to talk about.
I'll be sure and bring my cognition test information in for you. So the S2 cognition test to sort of –
So, buddy, if you were a scout or the quarterback coach for Team X, and would you give a darn if that guy tested well on that test, or would you want him to go out and throw a bunch of completions?
Well, some people, I would want him to throw the completions, but some people go with the analytical stuff. Anything they get a number on or whatever, they put it in a computer and crunch it and say, "Well, look, he's great, but his cognition test showed this and showed that." I don't know. The first ones that started doing something like was the Dallas Cowboys way back in the day. They started giving those tests and things of that nature. So, I guess I would probably naturally look for Naturally, I'm going to look at the quarterback, but I'm thinking, well, I don't know. We're old guys. Maybe they do it that way this time, Shane. I mean, it could.
Well, they do, but I mean, I will tell you this. I know nothing about C.J. Stroud. I wouldn't know him if he walked in my door. I'm just watching him play football. The dude can throw the football, and he threw a bunch of completions. So he's figuring something out. Now, he may not be able to figure it out through this test. But again, Bryce Young will be the first quarterback taken. He is an elite football player.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. But I also know that he's fallen. That
Bryce Young?
No. Stroud has fallen.
Right, but probably because of whatever this test says. But again, there's a lot of dudes that fail tests that play high quality football. So I don't know. I laugh at some of this stuff, and I get it. They have to do it because that's what they're paid to do all this due diligence and all these silly tests and stuff.
Right.
It comes down to, can the dude play football or can he not?
Yeah.
I've gone through that as a coach before. Whenever my eyes and told my other coaches, this guy cannot play football, but they still want to put him out there. And what happens is they still can't play football, but they think because of this or that. It's just it's crazy how this business is.
For sure, I understand. Well, Shane, it's good to have you back home, my man.
Indeed.
Travel safely. I'll talk to you on the show in the morning.
All right, buddy. Take care.
See you on the radio. Shane Matthews on his way home from Texas, where he's been the coach of the Orlando. It sounds funny. The Orlando team in the XFL. Let me play this spot. France Beard standing by. I'm also going to play this Urban Meyer interview where France can hear it, and we'll talk a little ball. France will explain to us what's happening and what's going on with the guys that went to the portal. He's got more information on that than I do. Here's a message from Titan MRI.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life. And the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
All right, thanks very much, Jeff Cardoza. Now it's time to go get the star of the show. The rest of it, just wait for him to show up, and then we just give him the microphone, sit back and say, okay, here he is, France Beard. Hello, Francis.
Good morning, bud. It's evening, isn't it?
It is evening. That'd be a good way to start. Yeah, it is. But who cares what it is, right?
Kind of lose count. I'm having so much fun, right?
Yeah, I will say this, that it was fun today talking to both Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier in this interview I did. It's rather long. I'm not going to play with his bites. I played earlier the Spurrier bite when Shane was on, and asked him about his biggest wins and stuff and most important wins. And what would you say he would say?
I would say the 17-13 win over Alabama in year one. That was critical.
Bingo. You got it, pal. You nailed it.
I would say the second biggest win was 14-9 over FSU.
Well, he didn't go that deep. He didn't go that deep. This is the one that would. But you're right. You got it exactly right. That's what he said. And Shane agreed. Of course, Shane was a part of that. But well, this story I'm working on for Gator Bait, and it'll be later on in the week. I'm sort of not comparing them, but you know both of the guys really well, and I know them really well. And I got thinking about it because Steve brought up the fact that, what do you think we have in common? And I said, well, winning. He said, no, hating to lose. So I decided to talk to both of them, which I did this morning, pretty lengthy interviews. And I pulled a couple of bites out from that. And later we'll have the story later in the week. And then here is what Steve Spurrier, about Urban Meyer, said about Steve Spurrier. I want to get your take on this, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Relationship with Steve early on, and then what you picked up from, and you respected him right out the bat in your first press conference. That relationship and how you guys continued on as competitors and then friends.
Yeah, well, I've always been so respectful of the coaches that preceded me, and and I made sure that I used to always tell our coaching staff that I would release you from your position if I heard you complain about the previous staff. I just don't understand that. I don't, a coach that was there before you, give them their respect. And, that's a comment. I just don't understand that when people make comments about the previous staff, they need to move on, and make it their team. And so that was regardless who the previous coach was. But I also just had great admiration for the guys that did it right, the guys that, did not cheat, the guys that were creative in the game. And you talk about one of the greatest of all time is Steve Spurrier. I did not realize the intensity of the fan base wanting Steve Spurrier back until I got there. And, I started hearing things. And then the first year really came to a head when we played him and we lost. And we had to have security. And, there were some things said that were, I remember I walked into my radio show one time and, it was awful. Got booed. And, I just remember people were so adamant they wanted Steve Spurrier back. And this is my first year. And we were like the outsider coming into Gainesville, Florida, because everybody, and I get it, he won a Heisman Trophy there. It's his school. And that stayed with us for a while. That was a tough situation. But my respect for Steve Spurrier goes back many, many years. I'd like to think I took that job. I didn't know much about Florida growing up. And Steve Spurrier became the envy of a lot of coaches, young coaches, when they saw, the style of play was something never seen before in college sports. The swagger, the confidence of the program, the fact that he was, doing it the right way, and he's a winner. So I admire that. And we in our own way, tried to, we went spread offense, and a lot of our creativity was because Steve was with Coach Spurrier is one of those guys that had enough courage to think outside the box. And Dan Mullen and I would talk about that all the time. Our appreciation for Coach Spurrier.
I remember your first press conference, you were asked if you wore a visor. And your comment was, no, but if I did, I wouldn't wear it around here.
Yeah, there was a shadow, and there still is. And it's there's a Woody Hayes shadow, there's a Spurrier, there's a Bo Schembechler shadow, and those are all, I'm not saying it's bad things, but it's a real thing. That Georgia game at Jacksonville, that was one of those games that you loved, but you hated. I couldn't stand that game until it was over because of stress. And it wasn't just the stress that was a great game. It was what Steve Spurrier did to that game. He made it a one-sided rivalry. And that was after, the stories about, why he was so adamant on beating Georgia. But he beat Georgia, beat them soundly at times. And then I remember just everything that you do as a head football coach at Florida, you're going to hear comments from writers, from fans. And unfortunately, back then I listened to a lot of that. But everything was, well, Spurrier did it this way, Steve did it this way, and I get it.
All right, there you go, friends. You knew love that already. Your comments on what Urban said, I'll get your picture back here, and that Georgia game and what have you. And we always said it's the guy who follows the legend that has the biggest problem. He didn't follow him, but he followed the guy who followed Spurrier. And he had a lot, he will admit to you, he had a lot to overcome. And it wasn't easy, especially with the games like Georgia, where Steve dominated.
Well, buddy, Steve Spurrier's shadow is a very, very dark shadow. Not dark in a bad way, but there's light shadows and there's dark shadows.
He casts a giant shadow, yeah.
Steve's shadow is dark and intense over this entire program. And whether we like it or not, whether it's right or wrong, Steve Spurrier is always going to be the standard by which everybody is measured. It's kind of like at Kentucky. They've had 4 different basketball coaches win national championships since Adolph Rupp died. And yet, Adolph Rupp is the standard by which everybody will always be compared. At Alabama, as great as Nick Saban has been, Nick Saban is still compared to Bear Bryant. Bear's shadow will always linger over that program, I guess, for a long time, maybe until Nick has won at least one more national championship at Alabama than Bear did. They both won 6 at Alabama. But it's a strange thing about how legends are perceived. And at Florida, Steve brought the first true, lasting measure of success that we'd ever had. We'd had pockets of success. Steve Spurrier brought 12 years of it, without 12 years in which there was never a season where he had fewer than 9 wins. 12 seasons in which the Gators were ranked in the top 10, most of which were ranked in the top 5 or 6 teams. And of course, you had that run in 95 and 96 when the Gators were the number 1 team in the country, bar none. Well, with the exception, they did get beat by Nebraska there, but they were undefeated going into that game with Nebraska. So, like it or not, Steve Spurrier is going to be he's going to be the measuring stick for every single coach, even today. People will look at what Billy Napier did, and even though Steve Spurrier came to Florida 32 years before Billy Napier did, Billy Napier is going to be compared to Steve, and maybe that's not fair, but that's the world we live in today. And it's a tough thing. The only way you can beat that is to win the games that you're supposed to win some games that you're not supposed to win, and along the way, while you're winning, have the legend himself sort of be seen as embracing you. And I'm not blaming Steve Spurrier for this, but I think because Steve, he couldn't do it. But if Steve had not been coaching at South Carolina when Urban was here, and people could have seen Urban Meyer getting sort of Steve Spurrier's endorsement, a pat on the back, or being seen in public with a smile on their face, it might have changed perceptions, but that didn't happen because they were competing at different schools at the time. Billy Napier does have an advantage in that Steve's back here, and if he starts winning and gets close to a couple championships, and people see that Steve Spurrier kind of has an arm around him, or a pat or a handshake in public, things like that kind of let you know that there's an endorsement, it may change some of the perceptions.
Do you think Mullen kind of dissed Spurrier?
Not really. Dan always was quick to tell everybody he wore the visor because of Steve Spurrier. That was, he wanted to be an offensive savant, which is what he thought Spurrier was. And of course, Steve was an offensive savant.
And you heard Urban say that he and Mullen used to always admire Spurrier's work when they were young coaches, remember?
Oh, yeah. And what was it to admire about him? I'll never forget. I'm having lunch with Jack Hairston, and Jack had just been with Spurrier, and it was in the spring before the first spring game, and Jack said, "Well, I asked Steve, who's going to lead the SEC in passing?" He said, "Whoever I put in at quarterback."
I was there when he asked the question. I heard it. Yeah.
And it's so typical of Jack, to ask that question.
Yeah.
And so typical of Spurrier to give that kind of response.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, Steve Spurrier, we don't even come close to realizing how great the man was.
We really don't. You're right.
I mean,
5 home losses. Of course, Urban did too, but Steve had more games.
Steve was here for 12 years. He lost 122 wins, 27 losses, and
5 at home. Only 5 at home.
Yeah, only 5 at home, and I think 3 of them were to FSU.
Probably were.
My
Who was ranked
goodness.
top 5 all those years.
Yeah, but and of course I remember when he beat Bobby Bowden 14-9 in 1991.
Yeah.
I also remember when he beats Bobby Bowden in 1995, and it was that. I'll tell you what I remember about that game. It was Florida had a good lead at the half, and then FSU came out and scored on its opening possession of the second half, and everybody is thinking, "Oh my God, here we go again. FSU is going to come storming back," because they remembered the year before was the choke at Doak. Everybody is thinking it's going to happen again. Oh my God. And what does he do? Ike Hilliard splits the safeties. There comes the pass. Boom. It's just it. And this is the genius of Spurrier. This was not a deep pass. It was an 18-yard pass, but he runs Riddell underneath. He splits a safety with Ike over the top. The safeties go with Riddell. Ike's right there. Boom. And here you go. Right down the middle, and it goes for a touchdown. He also threw Doring set the SEC record with a touchdown catch in the northwest corner of the end zone that game. I remember that as well too.
Unfortunately, I also remember Terry Bowden coming in here with his Auburn team and beating Steve. And I remember that most painful loss after 9/11. That game was postponed to the end of the year. And that guy, Travis, what's his last name, from Florida?
Travis Hunter.
No, it wasn't Hunter. It was the guy's running back. Came in and ran for 200 yards and Tennessee upset Florida.
I thought
running
it was
back. His name was Travis. He's from like somewhere down there in Florida.
Yeah, he was from Frostproof.
Yeah. Anyway, he had the game of his life, and that's the game that Florida probably would have won a national championship.
Travis Stevens was the one who had the big game.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the running back before, because they had another Travis before.
Yeah.
We always contained him though.
Yeah.
But they had Jamal Lewis in '98 when we lost. And think about that game, we lost up there in Tennessee in 1998. My goodness, we fumbled the ball into the end zone. We had 3 fumbles in that ball game. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Logan Dupree came up with Travis Henry. You're right. Hey, Francis, I'm going to call you the great placater because nobody does this like you. And I'll save this spot just for you so Gator fans will be able to sleep a little better tonight. Well, they're upset. Number one, they're upset the baseball team. You got a really good column over the weekend explaining some of that. And number two, they're upset for what they perceive to be big losses with 2 guys going in the transfer portal. Now, Henderson being one, and the edge rusher,
Ryland
Powell.
Powell Ryland.
Powell going in. And you wrote about both. Let's take them one at a time. What's with the baseball team? Are they in danger of not making it to Wichita?
No, heavens. Look, they hit a little bit of the skids. If anybody can get the pitching corrected to throw strikes, it's Kevin O'Sullivan.
True.
And, they've just hit a stretch. And we've seen them this year when their pitchers do throw strikes and how they can dominate, both in the bullpen and the starters. I think he'll get that done. I'm really convinced of that. It was bad up there at South Carolina, but South Carolina is a really good team at home. They're 25-1 at home this year. They don't lose at Founders Park, which if they host a regional, they're going to host the Super as well, and they've got a really good shot to go to Omaha because of that. Florida has got to play to get a top 8 seed. If they get a top 8 seed, then they play at home, and the Gators are really good at home too. Make no mistake about that. They're really, really good at home. I think they got to do a couple things. I think they need to move Wyatt Langford down in the order.
Yeah, he haven't hit the ball.
Well, he's not getting any good pitches to hit. Though don't people perceive that they can pitch to Caglione, but they're not going to let Wyatt Langford start them off with a home run. And so he's not seeing any pitches. I think they need to drop him down in the order, let him hit, let him be a guy that protects the guy from the back end. Maybe move Cade Curlin back to the leadoff spot, and then drop Wyatt down one. I would prefer to see him hit like number 4 and move Ryapel down in the.
I like Rivera in there. He's hitting the ball like crazy,
Yeah.
But they didn't hit the ball that good in South Carolina.
No, they didn't. But you look at how many hard hit balls they had. They hit into double plays, et cetera, like that. They hit the ball on the nose so many times, and it was right at somebody.
True.
The
bullpen was a problem. The kids can't get past that 5th inning, man. They're just getting hammered late in the game, and I don't know what's wrong with those guys.
Well, here's another thing that Kevin was talking about earlier in the year too. He said you're going to get to the end of the season and you're going to shorten your bullpen. And I think that he's there now because you only have 2 non-conference games left, which means you're going to be basically playing like you do in a regional and a sub-regional 3-game series for the most part. So you're going to shorten your bullpen a bit. And I think what you're going to see from here on out is you're going to see Cade. I think you're going to see Cade Fisher and Phil Abner as your lefties out of the bullpen. You're going to see Slater.
I like Slater. I
like Slater too. And goodness, I just think that I think they're going to be all right. I just really think they're going to be all right.
Can you promise us that, friends? Because my friend Khaki down in Lake Weir is counting on you being right.
They got 40. They got 14 games left, buddy. If they go 9-5, they've won 40 in the regular season. That's almost a guarantee that they're going to be a top 8 seed if they've got 40 regular season wins. If you go to Hoover and you win, say, 2 or 3 ball games, last year they won 4 there in Hoover. But you win, let's say they win 3 ball games in Hoover, you're at 43 wins, and you have, you're looking at, 16, 17 losses. You're going to be a national seed, which means you're hosting all the way through. And that's what you're playing for right now. You're playing for that national seed the rest of the way. People say, well, we got to win the SEC. The SEC is important, yes. But what you're playing for is the national seed because you're going to be in the tournament. You know that. So, if you're a top 16 seed, you're going to be hosting. We know that the Gators will be a top 16. The key is going to be to get to a top 8, and they got to win 9 more ball games to do that in the regular season.
All right, here's the news, and then I want to make a comment. I want to talk about this whole thing with the 2 guys that went to the portal today, and let's talk about what that means, who picks them up. This is what I want to show you here. And this is not even the latest picture. This is just one recently. I've got one in there that's spectacular. You'll see these greens. They are something else. You can see those. Look at it, friends. You can see that vitamins just oozing out of there, man. And right now it's twice as big. Grow them myself. Do the whole thing myself right here with my tower. And it's called, you go to Buddy Tower, buddytowers.com, and look it up. I'm going to get the right information. If you're interested in growing your own greens right inside your house, you can get them for outdoors. This is inside your house. You pick off those so delicious and so tender. Put them in a salad and make something that looks like this. And Francis will say, I'm going back to Buddy's house again to eat because he's got good victuals right here. I never understand why they spell victuals V-I-C-T, but there it is. That's you, France. That's you right there. Look at that. I can make you that, and when you come to see me. And then, of course, you can order your own tower, DM me, whatever, buddytowers.com. Ask about it. Grow tower. Get your own food. You might need it the way things are going in this world right now. All right, Francis.
We see a comment down there. Travis Henry was from Frostproof, not from Union County or Columbia. He was from Frostproof.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. All right, so here we go. Well, today we have a story, by the way. It's written by Matt about the fact that they've lost Xavier Henderson and Antoine Powell Ryland, and not a tragedy, not a travesty, whatever. And I think maybe the headline originally was a little more serious, and I toned it down. But the fact is that two guys who played, who had experience, names people recognize, are gone. And you think, well, wasn't Henderson one of the most productive receivers they had there? And why did he go, and why is he not on? Why did he transfer? And then certainly defensively, edge rushers are hard to come by. Antoine Powell, Ryland now is gone, and you said not to worry. Why?
Well, let's start with Antoine Powell Ryland. Good kid, very quick. But as an edge rusher, he's 6'5" and he's 233 pounds. He is quick enough certainly to handle to get by an offensive tackle, but an offensive tackle's got a quick slide step or can get his hands into his chest. He's not going to beat him. It's not going to happen, buddy. You got to have edge rushers in this SEC that can take on an offensive tackle, and he needs to be somewhere where they run a straight 4-3, where he can be an outside linebacker and play a lot in space. That's where his future is. Florida's committed to a 3-4, actually a 3-3-5, the way they're going to play it. And I think that guys like this freshman recruit Kelby Collins, and Princely Millen.
I know we can't say this.
I still can't pronounce it after all this time. But
Presley.
They moved him to the edge because they think that first off, they think he's quick enough, and secondly, they think give him that couple extra steps that he can take there, and the get off and get his hands into the chest of an offensive tackle. They think he can win that way. And that's what the future is with this defense, is they got to have guys that can do that. I don't think Antoine Powell Ryland was going to be that guy, and I think his time was going to be diminished. Florida brought in Manny Nunnery. Florida brought in the kid from Michigan. Florida brought in Taraja Mitchell, and all three of those are bigger, stronger, faster linebackers. Shamar James is going to be another guy that's going to be a stud this year. I think that he saw the writing on the wall and he wants to play, and he's not and he doesn't need diminished playing time. So anyway, I like Xavier Henderson, great kid who has really good top end speed, buddy. But he doesn't do this. He is not a guy that's going to come 5 steps down the field, and all of a sudden he's got the wiggle in his hips, boom, 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 can make a double move and then get open. That's been the problem with him. Look at his yards per catch, which is, not that good. Last year was 10.7 yards per catch, which is pedestrian. You got to have a guy, particularly, you run him on the outside. Okay, those are slot receiver. For a guy that runs drag routes, those are slot receiver numbers. Those are not the kind of numbers you got to have out of your guys running on the outside. And he was running on the outside. I've heard from people who saw practice on a regular basis that the kids, Caleb Douglas in particular, and Aiden Mizell and Andy Jean, had surpassed him. And everything I've heard about the kid coming in from Tampa, Eugene Wilson, is that he's another one that has the wiggle, has the speed, etc. like that. I think Xavier Henderson wants to play a lot more than what he was going to. The guy who's going to be the downfield, who's going to be the top downfield receiver is Ricky Pearsall. We know Ricky Pearsall can get deep. We know he can get open on the deep routes. And his numbers have shown it. Look at him. He averaged 20 yards a catch last year. There's a big difference between 20 yards a catch and 10.7.
Yeah, I take your word for it. You can help me on this. I just happened to glance at this coming on the air. Deion Sanders now has 18 players have gone to the portal. And one of them is the guy, 1-1 Snyder. What's his name? You know the name. 4-star cornerback. 1-1. And it's either Snyder or whatever. I read somewhere, I think on 3, that he has a visit to Florida. 4-star corner. I think they recruited him in the past, as I remember. Know that name? I can't think of his last name. Somebody help me out. But 1-1 Snyder, is it? I read it on Twitter real fast. Anyway, he's a 4-star. He's a 4-star recruit, and I'm just based on what I had read about.
They've lost. Xavier Smith, who's a kid from Atlanta, is gone. They lost receivers Montana, Lamonius Craig Sowell, both left. Jordan Tyson left. A running back named Deion Smith. You think if anybody's gonna make it, Oki Salave is safety. He's gone. Tyron Taylor is gone. Edge rush. But here's the thing: is every coach has to do it his own way. Last year, Billy Napier let guys stay and said, okay, we're going to give you guys, you can prove yourself, you can graduate, etc. And they stayed. And there's a lot of people who I've talked to who said he should have
1-1 Johnson. I just found, 4-star class, Louisiana athlete 1-1 Johnson decommitted 9 hours ago. And I read he's got a visit to Florida. Anyway, that's
here's the, Deion's had a lot of guys who have hit the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. Last year, we thought that the sky was falling when we had like 7 or 8 guys that transferred out. Mm-hmm. One of which was Copeland, who had an okay year at Maryland, but nothing really to write home about. Mm-hmm. Could he have helped here? Sure, I think he could have helped here. But he didn't. He wanted to go and found out that the grass wasn't exactly greener where he was. He may have been better off to stay where he already had a chance if people knew him. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is, you got to do things your own way, and you've got to, I think we're going to see probably, I would expect at least 3 more, maybe 4 more transfers this week, because they've got the rest of this week to get their name in the portal, and think we're going to see that, and I think he's going to get a quarterback. Although I disagree. He's not going to bring in some stud quarterback. I talked to some people today, and they told me that ain't going to happen. Mertz was good. We didn't see him. All we saw was the spring game, and the spring game wasn't that impressive. Yeah. But from what I was told, it was good. It's going to get a couple defensive linemen, going to get a couple offensive linemen, going to get a couple safeties.
Yeah. All right, my daughter from Pennsylvania has arrived, and I will be leaving to go back to see Rebecca. And thank you, Francis. Another good show. Appreciate it. We'll catch up again tomorrow, next day, and good job.
Thanks a bunch, Bud Light, and hope you and Miss Joni are doing just peachy.
Well, thank you, peachy cream for sure. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. We're going to tell you about our friends at Renstar because we saved the best to last. These are people that really mean a lot to us. They're special in many ways, not the least of which is they do so much for my hometown here in Ocala. And it's a business that speaks to the issues of health and one that does a terrific job. They're nationally known. And I love talking about them. I could talk about them for a half hour. Because they're good people, they do a really good job, do a great service. As you might know by now, after all these years, they supported this program and supported our town. They have a high-quality, patient-centered clinical research facility in downtown Ocala. Rinstar Medical Research brings a cutting-edge clinical research trials to Ocala in areas like Alzheimer's and psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraine, fibromyalgia, many other things that affect our community. And you can also take part in their clinical trials. They like having indigenous information so they can pass it along to those who are making the treatments that we need here. And they've been doing these trials since 1998. They did more than 700 clinical trials here and continue to partner with major and prominent pharmaceutical and biomedical companies throughout the medical industry just for giving them information they need to know how to treat us better. So check them out. You can be a part of those trials. Go to redstar.net, find out more about them, see if you qualify. In some cases, you compensate. For your time and travel. Redstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Good to have Shane back. Thank you, Shane. Be on his show tomorrow morning. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Coach Spurrier and Coach Meyer. Got a good show for you tomorrow and Wednesday. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching the Buddy Martin Show. Good night, folks, and have a beautiful night.